So, if you have been watching the channel during this crisis, you'll know that I've pointed out how the media has acted disgracefully, been trying to spin the news, trying to spin the stimulus and talk about how everyone's a socialist now with the stimulus package, completely ignoring the fact that, most of the conservatives are actually not very particularly happy with the stimulus and not really liking the stimulus and are asking how you're going to pay for it. No, this is a dumb idea, and trying to see whether or not we have available options. Well, the media has been disgraceful and has been lacking seriousness in the coverage. But maybe they'll finally start taking it seriously now. Because the one thing we know about the media is they sure love themselves. And now, after an NBC News employee died Thursday after testing positive for the coronavirus, maybe, just maybe, now that one of their own has been taken out, they'll start taking this seriously and stop with all the political gamesmanship and everything. Although those who are in the alternative media on YouTube, they might not care so much. But as we go through and we analyze this situation, there is a danger that we probably haven't really considered because we were all bogged down with so many other things. And that is the fallout of all of this. What happens next? What are the potential dangers, especially, since we are in an election year? What could be the big fight after this, after we've all been rattled, that can really tear this country apart? Well, have you considered this point? Supreme Court says all justices are healthy amid coronavirus panic. Now, have we really considered that the members of the Supreme Court are in the highest risk group for the coronavirus? Now, think about that. Think about what would happen if once we get through this crisis, once we start reopening businesses, once we start getting the economy back on track, what would happen if, due to the coronavirus, several of the Supreme Court justices get, wiped out by the virus, die because of the virus? And let's say, the Supreme Court justices that do are, let's say, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, or a couple of other left-leaning judges. And then we're in the middle of an election year and, still dealing with this crisis. And then we get bogged down in a political fight as we consider Trump nominating more Supreme Court justices. How is that going to pan out here? Would Trump go through and, deliver an olive branch by replacing Democrat justices wiped out by the coronavirus with Democrat justices? Or would this completely tip the Supreme Court for decades to come? I mean, if, let's say, 3 justices get wiped out and they're all left-leaning liberal Democrat justices, and Trump replaces them with young conservative justices, how would that shape the future of the Supreme Court? And as we go through and we see this, how is that going to shape out the election once we get out the crisis? And how is that going to affect, the country? Can you imagine what the media coverage would be like in that situation? Can you imagine what turnout in the election is going to be, and how much, the ads are going to be about division and hatefulness after we have tried to rely on each other and come together and are already failing to do so, to have such a battle, come about? Now, what is the likelihood of this? I don't know. Are the justices, currently, in complete quarantine for their own protection, saying, hey, you're not allowed to go anywhere, do anything. Everything, meals and all of that will be delivered to you. You're not allowed to leave your house whatsoever, and nobody in your house, your spouse is not allowed to go and not allowed, to have any physical interactions until all of this is over. But then again, we don't know how long this is going to last, right? We don't have enough data to say that in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or even 6 weeks, that all of this will be cleared up? Is our social distancing, only prolonging this, and is this going to continue to recirculate once, everybody's saying, hey, we can't, hold down the economy any longer? And what dangers that this poses to the Supreme Court? Now, of course, there's also the issue of, well, what if it takes out some conservative judges? Well, then replacing conservative with conservative judges, probably not that, a big of a fight, will not be that much of a division. But imagine how, if everything is as doom and gloom as everyone's predicting, and that this is something that's just going to keep spreading, and that, some people are saying is going to have a second wave and possibly a third wave, how this could potentially impact the Supreme Court if the Supreme Court justices end up coming down and being infected. Because think about this, as the coronavirus was spreading throughout the United States and has spread like wildfire here, the Supreme Court was still open, before we even knew the extent of the spread, while people were asymptomatic, which means they were infecting other people before they knew themselves that they were infected. How many of those people were lawyers and that have argued before the Supreme Court? And how many people did the Supreme Court justices interact? I mean, we've now seen that, people in the media, the news media, who do interviews, and a lot of time in-person interviews, during the month of February, while this was all spreading, while we weren't knowing that it was asymptomatic spread, or towards the beginning of March, or before we got into the crackdown on social distancing. How many of those people have interacted back and forth with other political leaders who may have interacted with the Supreme Court justices? How could this shape out, after we get back to a sense of normalcy? Have we even considered this? And have we considered for the media that all the division and fake news that you are running right now during this crisis in order to stoke up, division and politicize everything and try and do the, election, how much division, and how much this could tear apart society if this ends up, leading to a Supreme Court battle? That is a major question that we need to be thinking about. So we need to start, asking ourselves, what are we doing to ensure that the Supreme Court justices don't get taken out by this? Because we can see in a situation where, let's say, 3 Supreme Court justices end up dying because of this. And let's say they were Democrat justices. And let's say Trump did appoint new justices to replace them. And let's say, for whatever reason, this turns out in a situation where Trump doesn't win re-election. And the next president comes in and they start saying, well, it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair. A virus, he took advantage of a virus. They shouldn't, be able to hold those seats and start trying to do, proceedings to have Trump's nominees removed in order to try and replace them with Democrat justices. What would that do to society? How would that go about? I mean, have we even considered, a long-term planning for how this can majorly disrupt our political system and our society? I know right now we're focused on the immediate, right? We're focused on the immediate crisis and trying to deal with what's going on right now. But, true leadership, involves not only being able to focus on what's right in front of you, but it's also about focusing on, planning for potential problems that could result after we deal with the initial outbreak, the first wave, and potentially, a second and third wave. We need to figure out how we're going to deal with those additional waves and how that's going to have an impact on society, and especially with a highly political, situation as what the Supreme Court could be. Now I know Trump has a list of judges, so he could easily go off, but, we also have to ask ourselves as conservatives, if some Democrat judges on the Supreme Court do get, coronavirus and die as a result, could we, give up the typical fight for the Supreme Court when there's an opening and extend an olive branch? in this situation and say, okay, this was a rare event, or are we going to go through and do a lot of, we must get conservative judges. Yes, this is our chance to change the Supreme Court for a decade. But then again, we also have to consider what if the situation was reversed? What if, there was a Democrat, in the White House right now and a Democrat Senate, and all this happened and some conservative judges ended up falling victim to this issue. I'm trying to keep it as Voldemort because of YouTube's algorithm, but in the reverse situation, would they extend an olive branch to us, or would they just say, hey, bad luck, we're just going to ram through and replace it and make it, a complete Democrat, 7-2, split on the court. So while we go off and we take a look at, the potential looming fights that are coming, maybe it's best that we do everything we can right now to come together, to heal some of the divisions and keep an eye on emerging problems that could really fracture society and try and take safeguards against that, because this could completely wipe out any semblance of a civil society in the United States. What kind of planning is in place for that? And we as a nation, how could we possibly handle such a situation if the Supreme Court does get, wrecked because of this? This is a very tough situation, and I'm not sure, what the best answer is. Personally, I'd probably say, hey, you know what? Tough luck. We need to ram in judges that are going to be constitutionalists, stick to the Constitution, the rule of law, and we don't need activist judges. We need good conservative judges. And while that would be my natural inclination, I also have to, for the first time, really consider what this could do to society as a whole. I don't know. You tell me what you think. If the Supreme Court were to get affected and this would leave, 2 openings or 3 openings or even 4 openings, on the Supreme Court because of this, should we, because of the situation, replace, conservative judges with conservative judges, liberal judges with liberal judges? Or should we just say, whatever, ram through all conservative judges as replacements, take back the Supreme Court for well over a generation, and eliminate the possibility of activist judges? Let me know. Put in the comments down below. Tell me what you think, both as the danger this would pose to society and fracturing society, especially during an election year, versus whether we should be more considerate to the political views of the other side. I know what my inclination is. What's yours?